All right,
So
Mary, take it away.
this is customs management, and uh, the first couple screens you're going to see, we did something to mock up the BluePass. We're not integrated with BluePass right now, so you'll see it looks like BluePass. We talked about it at some point. You can see for our login, we've got the underlines and the new style for the drop down.
And by the way, Mary, did you get the new login screen yet? Has that been sent over to you?
I haven't seen it.
Okay. All right. Celeste,
Is this to integrate with BluePass or is it just one to put in?
it's if you're integrated with BluePass, you don't need to use it. But if you're not going to be integrated with BluePass by the November release, then there's a login screen that looks basically exactly like the BluePass login screen.
Okay.
All right.
So we have a page that's a quick view of what's going on in the system when you first log in. This is our home page. Right now, we've put the header in and we've put the footer. We're waiting for um, I'm sorry, the new graphic that will be the customs management icon here. We've got, for settings, we have our language setting here. And this is the user. And we have help and the log out. The help we haven't hooked up yet. So the home is here. We've got for the admin a master maintenance, which allows us to maintain tables. And I'm currently logged in as a tenant admin, so I'd only be able to maintain the tables for my tenant. So we've got most of our work is here on this declaration screen. This allows us to select a declaration that's currently in process or have been recently processed. If I double click this, we can go into, this is an entry screen that would allow us to enter information or see information that's already been entered. We have tabs across this way. And we have nested tabs, so this is at a header level for the declaration. And we have history here. Once this allows us to look at a document, this is where we do our activities on a declaration. So when I click the Actions tab, it gives me options of what I can do next for our workflow. At this point, this is at a state that all I can do is copy the declaration. Okay. So I close this button, it'll take me back out. This will allow me to do filtering. And I was telling Steve and Celeste, one of these meetings we had, I think 2 weeks ago, I think it was Karthik, was showing that they had the little entry boxes at the top of each column. And I think that we want to request to put that on our list too, because Shell has like 7 other things that they want to put as filters here. And I think that would be much cleaner. Okay, so if we wanted to, this will allow us to filter down more. Okay, we do have the ability to do ad hoc queries, and this allows us to build a query in the system by choosing a particular kind of declaration, and then we can take columns from the declaration and add it to a display, and then, or we can use a column and add it as a filter. All right. One last thing we could look at is the master maintenance. We didn't get too far down this one. This allows us to manipulate information, and this is at the tenant level again. So this would allow Shell to manipulate some of their custom data that they're using to drive some of the drop downs. Okay. That, when I double click that, it brings up a panel that allows me to edit that data or copy it. Okay, I'm trying to think. That's pretty much the bulk of it.
So Mary, one of the things that jumps out at me right off the bat is just the font, like the Times. I don't know if that's Times Roman, but that font with the serifs on it. I don't think that is the font that we have in the style guide. Dennis and Tom, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but is that something that just has yet to be incorporated, or am I telling you something that's news to you?
They had not 100% done it, all the changes, so we intended to continue working on it this sprint.
Okay.
So is there anything else that from the group that jumps out that needs to be worked on?
Well, it's Martin here. What strikes me is that there's no title of the class, that the function that you're starting. So I think what should be where the filter buttons are, or the entries, we should say maintain
like
master data,
declaration,
that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's quite a big title that is defined in the style guide. So I think if that's there, then it looks a lot more from a framework on the style guide. So.
What about, so what is the group's feeling about, I'm trying to recall the conclusion we met with the entry fields at the top to be filters.
Yeah, we support both. We have the main filters, a selection of filters above it with labels, etc. And we have all the entries, or all the data in the grid can be filtered by wildcards and stuff like that. So I think that's the same in the what else did we see in the other products, like the TMS and Control Tower, I thought as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to recall the placement of that. Like, I think there was a standard decided that Derek helped on, perhaps. I think they may have settled out on putting the filter above the label, but
yeah, that's the discussion we had last time, because we do that in the TMS and WMS on our site. I did not follow up sending screenshots of that, but as I said last time, we first had them below, but then on feedback from customers, we put them on top. Well, so we are used to that now, but of course we need to have a common way of presenting these things.
So this is Dennis. I can jump in. I had a recent discussion with Derek about the design for these filters, and I think we're talking about two different things. Maybe it's just my misunderstanding, but it seems like one instance is where we have search fields that are above the table that you specify particular values of your search query, and then you run that search on like a search button or a submit button. So those inputs would be above the table, and then the system is going to throw back all the data in the table below with the search results. Separately, and yeah, we were discussing column level filters, and the latest design shot I saw from Derek had the field below the column labels. And Mary, I think you actually had it on one of your other screens that you just walked through,
Yes.
where it was a white text box directly underneath the column label. Yeah, like this. So this looks exactly in line with what I saw from Derek, and this is what I was going to be posing for the YMS team. So is that is that understanding that I have correct, like between the two, where we have, if you can filter on your search results that were already pulled from the system, but there's the other instance where you're actually searching on particular values, and in that case, those fields would be above the table so that you can run your query. That's my current understanding.
Yeah. So we have both as well. We have the main selection that before you run the report, that's above the table. But in the header field, we have the filter above the header name instead of within the header cell. Let's say it's just positioned above it. You can also disable it if you don't want to see it. You can store the values if you want to keep it for the next time. So we have a lot of functionality on these filters. Because our planners use it as well in the plan board and stuff like that. So I would not be happy with including it fixed in all the grids because, as I said in the plan board, it takes space, and we want to keep our we want to keep as much data on the screen to help the planner to visualize all the data and not to be have to scroll down as many times as or too much. So yeah.
I was also wondering about an advanced filter, having a link and clicking an advanced filter and then putting all your filters in there. Because, like I said, they want to add probably another row of filters right here, and it'll get very cluttered.
Yeah, I think we have that in the YMS. We have some main filters at the top, I think, and you can expand it to see the full thing. But maybe Sri can answer that better than I can, or maybe we can show it later on when we're in the YMS.
Okay. The only other thing I was going to say, we have these indicate, we have a pop-up here that gives us a quick view of what's in a particular declaration. And then these will allow us to do certain actions. So this would allow me to remove it. And if these are eligible, I don't have any eligible, but I could either click an icon here that allow me to send, or I can do multiple send by checking a bunch of boxes and hitting a button. Oh, and this button just allows us to select information to create another declaration.
I think that pop-up window looks really good. It looks really much in line with the modal windows that we're going for on the style guide.
Okay.
One other thing I wanted to comment on was the buttons themselves. And Mary, I didn't know if maybe this is something the team hasn't gotten to, but at this point, I think we really only have 3 different colors for button usage. There's like a green primary action, and then a blue secondary, and then like a dark gray subtle button. So I'm not sure, like maybe we need to consider expanding that, but I just wanted to point that out, that at this point we don't include like a red one, and the design of these buttons looks a little bit different from what's in the style guide.
They haven't gotten to that. The main time that we spent here is we had to completely reorganize the screen because all of our menus we had a big driving menu on the left for our navigation, so we had to restructure. So I've written that down. Yeah. So we'll definitely continue our work. Okay, that's all I had. Would we like to
Mary, just one quick question. It's more for Dennis and Tom. You guys are a lot closer to this than I am, but the date time picker, Mary, right there, that thing. Thank you. Does that look consistent with what we're using elsewhere, at least with the context of the style guide, or is that something that needs to be touched yet?
So I think generally from what I can see, that looks in line. I mean, there's just some minor things like the corners I don't think are rounded and what's in the style guide. But as far as the time picker itself, I know that placement is kind of what we were going to shoot for in adding that element into the date picker. So we have to combine date and time picker. My initial thought would be that the drop downs for the 12, the 0, and the AM or PM, those probably shouldn't look like a button. They should look more of like the drop downs that we've seen elsewhere on YMS, like with the downward facing chevron and then like a plain background. But I think the placement of everything there looks right, and that looks to be exactly what we were going for.
Yeah, except I'm not sure if the font may be right, but it may be just be the font size might be tinier than specified.
Yeah, it does look a little bit small.
Okay.
Okay, and what were you saying about the chevrons? They should be facing down?
Well, yeah, so you see how in their top line of filters, how you have the drop downs and the caret itself, like where it's facing, it's just a simple chevron. Whereas in the time picker aspect of your calendar, those chevrons are different. Like those are downward, those are like select triangles. So we just want to be consistent in that control using the same kind of icon. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
We use Vaadin, and so it has provided this. So we'll have to look into how do we manipulate that. Yeah.
I know there's a like Vaadin is its own separate piece of work, that it's a different system, and if it helps, I know that Carlton from the TMS development team, we have some, he has supplied some components, like demo component code that illustrates the interaction and the behavior and the design of what's available in the style guide. So, I mean, if it would help, Mary, I could shoot you those component code demos. And
is that
maybe,
are you referring to the prototype or something else?
It's not a full prototype. It's really just individual components extracted from the TMS system, and we just kind of put like, I don't know, like pieces of code together to just show like, okay, here's what a text input looks like, here's what a drop down looks like, and that's all that's on the page. So it's not a full prototype like the control tower prototype, if that's what you're thinking, but we do have snippets of component code that are available if that would help your team in aligning their development to the style guide.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'll make a note and I'll send that out to you after this.
Thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Mary, anything else you think we need to see? Is that pretty much covered?
It pretty much covers it.
Okay. Just one more question for Tom and Dennis. I know a lot of our efforts on the style guide have been focused on input screens and tables and the buttons and the menus and so on. I think one of the things we are going to need to spend a little bit of energy on, and I know, Tom, you've done a fair bit of work on this already on the TMS forwarding, but the dashboard view that we sort of opened up this session with, and I think we need to, this right here. So I think we have a design for this in TMS for forwarding, do we not?
Yeah, we do. That was kind of done early on, so yeah, I haven't touched that in a while, but we do, and it was, I guess, similar to this, except we did have some the ability to surface up some news items and had like a call to action basically to get started and new entry, etc. As I recall.
Okay, can you forward that over to Mary as well, so she's got that? Again, while I don't know that we've, let's say, fully designed out what a dashboard should be, but we at least have a starting point with TMS for forwarding, and at this point, consistency is better than perfection.
Yeah.
So if you could send that over to Mary, and Mary, you guys take a look at that and see if that's something. Hopefully, it's something that wouldn't be too terribly difficult to incorporate in to your dashboard.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mary. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and pass the presenter rights over to, is it going to be Sri or Amit? Amit, is it you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll make you the presenter.
All right.
All right. You're the presenter now.
Yep.
Okay. And I'll ask you the same question. Do you have the new login screen yet, or are we thinking we'll have the BluePass login incorporated in time for November?
Yes, we have the new login screen, but the current environment, what we are demoing is a QA environment. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So this is how it will look. So what we have changed here is the input field. It will have when I click here, it will highlight with a blue color. So I'm just gonna log in. Months. So yeah, we are still working with Dennis and team in order to change the UI and implement all the controls. So it's kind of a work in progress status as of now. But what we are going to demo today is the menu navigation. So this is how it looks like. The earlier menu was appearing on the left pane, and now it has moved to the top header. So although there is a lot of work involved, we still have to implement icons. We have to implement the action bar icons as well. But we have changed the screen colors, and we have changed the menu items. So this is how the search list or the search screen will look like. And this is when you navigate to the main details. So the tables are yet to change with the new UI style. This is the event log where all the historical data will be captured. And one more thing which popped out during our...
Just a quick question for you on the event log. Is that a table view that we're looking at there?
Yeah, will I go back to the event log? Just a moment. Yeah, basically this is a audit trail kind of thing where we track all the events for that particular appointment. Nothing but the transaction milestone for that particular record. So for example, when the appointment was created, when it was modified, or when the truck was actually getting in, parked, then the operations were carried out, when it was docked out and get it out. So basically the transaction date and time, then truck, trailer, and the user whose login it has been carried out.
Okay. So,
all right.
Amit, I know this is still a work in progress, but
yeah.
Just a comment / question on this. So the comment is, visually the table looks a little different than some of the other ones we've seen, particularly with the way the column headers, where they sit on the top of the table and how they look, how they behave. So is that something that you guys are still working on, or?
Yes, we are still working on. This is kind of a beta version. This is just as and when our development teams fix this, it will get deployed in the QA environment. So yes, this is pretty much needs to facelifted. This is just a primary version.
Okay. And then things like the buttons, I know you mentioned this already, but the buttons along the top right and the logo placement, all that.
Yeah, correct. Ideally, this will go under under a pane here in this place, but currently we are still working on this. What we have achieved at this position is just we have changed the colors of the screen across the application, so it shouldn't look odd with just one or two screen. So yeah, slowly this primary, I mean 18.0, what we are focusing is on the appointment screen and the main details and the search area. So yes, by the time we further progress, it would have been changed.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just navigating back to this search which we had discussed during our earlier. So this is the additional search area where we enter the data and it will be applicable here. It will filter the data in the grid. In addition to this, we also have something called default statuses. So what we can do is we can configure certain default statuses for the operation. For example, in this screen, these are the three statuses which are shown as a default. So a user will by default will show all these records having this status. So this is something which we have. So you can configure what kind of a data you want to see as a default. So you don't have to filter the data by the status of that particular record. You will always have that in place.
So sorry, can you go back to that status? Sorry, that status drop down. I want to see that behavior one more time. So you're
sure. Basically, these are the event milestone for the record. What we can do is for any screen, search screen, we can have certain default statuses configured. So when user is searching for the data, every time he doesn't have to input the value for search. There could be a certain statuses which can be fetched as a default.
okay.
And those.
This is stored at a user level, or on what basis this is stored?
This is not stored at the user level. This is at the party level.
No. I'm talking about the status. Like, for example, you logged in as Amit, right? And if I selected the status as appointment booked, and
correct.
next time if I log out and log in, you mean to say by default it will show appointment booked as the status is?
Right? No, Karthik. No, Karthik. What will happen is this is at the application level. Whatever statuses we are configuring here for that screen are application level. It is not a user persistent. The below grid, however, is the user persistent, where you can define what are the columns you want to see in the grid. This is, however, is a user persistent. So let's say if I uncheck this carrier, so when next time I log into the application, I wouldn't have carrier shown on the screen unless and until I go back and check it again. I hope that answer.
So what we meant with this is that that each overview has certain statuses and already filled in the filter. The filter is not shown by default; it's hidden. And in case you want to show more appointments than what you're seeing initially, you can click on that button and it will open up, and you can remove the statuses in the drop down, or you can enlarge the date range, or you can look for specific appointment types. So. Yeah, so by default it's not shown, but the defaults are filled in. And then when you want to make a change to make the search wider or other statuses as well, then you can go in there to make those changes.
Yes, absolutely, correct.
So I'm noticing the advanced search panel. So Mary, you had asked a question about, or I think you made a comment about you wanted to have a way of hiding or expanding the advanced search.
Yes.
So I like this approach. So just a couple quick questions. So is this Dennis, Tom? Is this consistent with the style guide? This approach here, and then secondly, this would be, assuming it is, to the broader team. Are we all using this approach?
So the fields that are grouped there in the mockups I provided, those are going to be. I proposed that those were under an expandable subhead, and that they were open by default. So I think the fields themselves look relatively consistent with the style guide, but the control should take on the style of an expandable subheader, which is in the style guide and in the mockups I provided. So that's the only difference that I'm noticing at this point. And if I could point out for that status selector, the drop down, my intention, I may not have specified or annotated it on the mockups, but that should probably take on the style of a multi-select drop list, which we do have component code available for, where you can select multiple options within a drop down, and there's a specific design treatment for displaying them of what's selected, what's not selected. So Amit, I'll follow up with you afterwards on this about that.
Okay. We'll see that. We'll change it. But sure, I mean, still we are working. So yes, what you mentioned about the controls and the buttons, yes, we are yet to change those. We are still working on that.
Hold on, for the subheaders, and that's not only for yard management, that's also for the TMS and WMS. We will not do that in 18.0. That will take too much redesign. And also for the YMS, we need the Vaadin upgrade to 8. It's from version 7 on which we are currently. So on 18, we will keep the labels on top, and also have the. So yeah, we need to do that in 18.1. And also for the TMS and WMS, the labels will be outside of the entry fields. We are already doing the control that we can have the subheaders, but it's too late to do this at this stage. It only came up, I think, in the demo of Anthony 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So that's a bit too late to still make those changes within this release. And I can't have this only for one screen and the rest in the old style. So it needs to be handled in a bigger exercise, let's say.
Yeah, truly.
Yeah. So Martin, we were talking about the way that the field labels show up relative to the input fields.
Correct. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And what we're doing on the that was the other question you had on the filters. So we're also opening them up by default. We can hide them. We have a grippy for that, a click button to hide them. Yeah, if we're going to hide them by default, then yeah, we need to make a change. But I would suggest to do that in the next release and not in the 18.0 anymore.
Okay, and yeah, finally, one more thing which I thought of mentioning here is the filters on the top of the table. So we have something here which, in addition to the additional search, we can also filter by the column here. So yeah, this is how it is.
So that's like it's like a contains kind of search operator.
Yeah, I mean it is a default Vaadin feature which we have utilized here. What happens is every grid in the Vaadin, it has default search on top of it. So whatever values you have in the record in the data, it can pull in. For example, like this. So
yeah, the question was it a like search or not?
Yeah, it looks like
it's a like yeah.
It's a like. Okay, so it's a
it's a like.
Okay.
I think that's all from our side. Any more questions?
Just so again, Dennis, Tom, does that search behavior is that consistent with the style guide also?
So that kind of like secondary search, that wasn't something that was in the original style guide, but that's what I was mentioning on Mary's portion of the demo, where we're trying to pick a consistent approach to move forward with. And I think the version that Mary had, where the field is under the label and it's contained within the column header, the gray column header, that's our current thinking of what we want to go with. So it looks like, Amit, what you guys have here is really close. We just have to get it contained in the gray column head. But yeah, we think it makes sense to have the input underneath the column head so that you're setting the context of, okay, if you're looking at your appointment number column and you want to further filter, which column you're in, then you can type in a secondary search and it'll filter out those results. So it's kind of going to be an add-on to the style guide. I'll just sync up with Derek of whether or not that's going to make it into the next version of the document, but that's our latest thinking.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else, Amit, that you wanted to cover?
No, at this point of time, Doug, I think this is what we have. We are still working continuously with Dennis and team. So yeah, we'll see how we can improve on this.
Yeah, so Doug, the other screens are already using the same color scheme. Yeah, so that's a generic change. But of course, the screen build that we have to restructure, let's say, we have to do that per function really. So
yeah. And the fonts, are these the fonts from the style guide as well? It's hard for me to tell.
I don't know. Do you know, Amit?
I think those are slightly different, but we will be changing those.
Okay. Yeah. I had a question on that, Doug, or Dennis maybe. Because we're using Google Sans, right? Sans Serif or something from the web?
Yeah, we're using Source Sans Pro.
Yeah, I thought it was Google Web kind of thing. Because I was thinking about China, whether that would be a problem over there, because we can't access Google.
Well, yeah, I know what you mean, Martin. It is available as a Google Web font, yeah. But we can actually on that same. If you go to that website, you can download the font family as its own file. So I don't know. I mean, from a development perspective, I can't speak to what the decision would be on whether or not we're hosting it server side or if we're always pulling it from Google. But yeah, that is a good point because Google is not accessible through China's servers. That's good consideration.
Okay. We'll think about that one.
The only other thing I don't think was mentioned was I don't know where we netted out in terms of like the icons used for status. Like for status, there was some discussion of maybe moving those to being labels so they're more easily filtered. And then with the flag styling, I don't know if we have a consistent flag style to use across applications yet.
Yeah, so generally the approach we're talking about taking is replacing illustrative icons with their textual counterparts. So that for that exact reason, so that you can search using those column filters on the status. So I think in most cases that really shouldn't be an issue because there's only like maybe 4 or 5 different icon representations of a particular category. But I know that there's going to be some instances, definitely in YMS, where we have to stick with illustrative icons. So those will be kind of like a one-off instance. But yeah, to answer your question, Tom, generally the approach we want to go with is replacing icons with text where we can.
Yep, indeed. Indeed, we are trying to move very, very strongly away from icons. So, okay. All right, Amit, team, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. No problem. Thanks.
Okay, we'll give everybody back about 13 minutes of your day. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll post this on the intranet site on the wiki, so we'll have the recording. But again, thanks, Mary. Thanks, Amit. Appreciate your time, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Looks good.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.